Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Krishna Mukherjee from ET Edge, welcoming you all to another interesting episode of ET Unwired, Future Proof Your Cloud Journey, Cloud Assured, Cloud Secured, powered by Tata Communications and Amazon Internet Services India Limited. Winning enterprises have embraced cloud as a key enabler for business transformation. And organizations with right migration, application modernization, and cloud management strategies are more successful in their digital transformation initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, our today's discussion would revolve around unlocking the power of cloud. And glad to share to discuss the same, we are joined by some great technology leaders from the industry. Our today's session would see two interesting technology presentations by Tata Communications and Amazon Internet Services, followed by an interactive panel discussion. Also, please share your questions over the chat window, which we will be answering during the Q&A session towards the end. So requesting you all to please present till the end and answer polls and feedback form. Without further delay, let me invite our first speaker today, Mr. Rajesh Awasthi, Global Head, Managed Hosting and Cloud Services, Tata Communications. Welcome, Rajesh. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks, Krishna.
Yeah,
Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy to be part of this discussion today.
great. Thanks, Rajesh, for joining. So before I hand it over to Rajesh, request you all to be please present till the end of the session and of course get your questions ready for the Q&A session. With that, over to you, Rajesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. So I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, they are. Yes, they
Okay.
are, Rajesh.
So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session, which we have put together along with ET and AWS India. I'm Rajesh Avasthi. I head the cloud and managed hosting services business for Tata Communication. What we are going to talk about today in my presentation is how we as a service provider can help future-proof the cloud journey which your organizations are taking, where we are stating that it would be a cloud which is assured the way you wanted it to uh, service your digital transformation, as well as making sure that it is a secured environment when you are moving into the cloud, because that's one of the foremost thing which comes into your mind when you go on your cloud journey. So with that, I'm going to move on. So what we've seen today is that in today's times when people are looking at digital initiatives or digital transformation initiatives, cloud becomes the epicenter of that, and that has been stated by various analyst firms. So these are some of the anecdotes on that sense. Gartner talks about that the public cloud services market is growing at a CAGR of around 16%. And from 2018 to 2022, it is expected to be around $331 billion. Obviously, this includes various kind of services, which includes infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, as well as some SaaS services, which are part of these services. Gartner also states that by 2024, more than 50% of these cloud services uh, engagements which would happen with the enterprise customers would include some kind of a cloud infrastructure professional or a managed services partner who would help customers in their digital transformation journey. And this has been validated even by 451 Research, where they stated that 57% of IT leaders expect that a partner with cloud services provider and a managed hosting experience would help them in their journey, because it would be a journey which would be starting from a hybrid environment and then leading into a multi-cloud initiative. And that's something which is where a managed services partner would be playing a critical role in this particular engagement. So if we look at that, when we talk to our enterprise customers, what we hear from them is that the hybrid cloud is a new norm because it meets the modernization requirements associated with the digital transformation or experience which they want to give to their end customers. It gives them agility. If they want to roll out any new services, they are not dependent on hardware procurement cycles. And thus it becomes an agile environment, not only from that perspective, but also the way it can scale. That also becomes very important. So what some of these benefits which customers are leveraging from this hybrid cloud is the flexibility and scalability which they are getting, the agility which they are getting, as well as they're able to drive innovation within their organization or business unit which they are consuming these cloud services from, thus maximizing their return on investment and looking at an overall TCO which is also meeting their requirements, which is reduced most of the times. So when we are talking of this hybrid cloud environment, what we mean to say is customers may have their own dedicated physical or a virtual IT infrastructure, which they may have deployed within their own data centers or maybe hosted with a hosting service provider like Tata Communications, or it could be a multi-tenanted private cloud like ISO private cloud combined with the public cloud services like AWS. And that's what we are calling as the hybrid cloud environment, which most of the customers are looking for when they are starting their cloud journey. So with that, we are going to go to the poll question, first questions. So the question that we are talking about here is, what are some of the challenges that you faced while you started your cloud infrastructure journey? So if you can give your feedback, that would help us gauge what that you guys are feeling in your particular space. So we'll have around 30 seconds for that. Again, reiterating the question, what are the challenges you face while adopting cloud infrastructure? And there are 5 options: migration complexities, lack of skilled professionals for managing the cloud infrastructure, driving cost efficiencies, managing security and adherence to the compliance or the regulation that you have, or looking at maintaining the optimal performance. So with that, basically, if you can share what is the results. So here you see the results. People are saying that migration complexities is one of the major concerns. So that comes to around 30% in this session. 23% are saying driving cost efficiencies is important, and that's one of the reasons they are looking at cloud movement. And while doing this, managing cybersecurity and adherence to compliance becomes an important thing. So these are the top 3 things which most of the people have in this particular session. So with that, I'm going to move on how we can help in some of these challenges which we have there. So when we are looking at these migrations, or we are looking at managing these hybrid cloud environments, what are some of the challenges that we hear from our customers? As you rightly stated, disruptive migration, because today IT is a business enabler and businesses run 24/7. So any disruption while doing this migration could create an havoc within the organization. So disruptive migration is a challenge which most of customers are stating. Siloed approach of a public cloud versus a private cloud, that also creates a challenge, that where do you put your workload on a private cloud or a public cloud environment, or a dedicated private cloud which you may want to deploy within this. The other area where our customers stated they have challenges, as rightly pointed out in our poll question also, skilled multi-cloud professionals, because how you manage a particular public cloud environment versus the other public cloud environment, these are 2 very different technologies, and managing them becomes a very critical job, and you need to have skills right for that particular platform. But when you're doing this migration, what is also important is how do you make sure that these cloud environments that you're deploying are connected with a fast or a low latency connectivity. And that's very important, because you don't deploy application in isolation. In your IT infrastructure, those applications will talk to each other. So how do you make sure that they are connected well within those organizations? And last but not the least, security threats. Cybersecurity is becoming a major concern, and compliance to adherence. You may have defined a IT policy within your organization, which includes the security policies as well. So how do you make sure that you look at compliance of those policies that you have put in? Okay, and that's something which is becoming a challenge for our customers. When we spoke to some of the customers, CIOs are saying that when they did this journey, some of them who were early adopters, they said that they saw marginal value from the cloud which they perceived when they wanted to start. And that's where they said that initially we thought we'll be able to do it on our own, but an experienced managed services partner could help them get the maximum benefit from that environment. And that's something which came out from some of the CIOs basically. So what we as Tata Communication did was we said, okay, we've been a data center provider. We've been into managed hosting services for very long. We have our own private cloud services. But when customers are looking at their journey, they are looking at a hybrid environment, which could be even going to a public cloud environment. So we partnered with the best in this particular industry. And AWS is one of such partners that we are working with, and we are an advanced consulting partner for them. What it means to you when you are taking these services from Tata Communication is that you get AWS certified solution architects who work with you during the design phase. But not only that, they also work on the professional services during the service delivery and assurance, so that whatever benefits that you envisage during the design phase are deployed according to that particular plan. And an experienced hand to manage these particular platforms and making sure that you get the single billing from a provider which is not only giving you the managed services, but also making sure that giving an SLA for the infrastructure managed services as well as the underlying infrastructure which is there. So that's the partnership that we have with Tata Communication. But what it means to you basically, when you do your cloud journey and you're looking at building a resilient hybrid cloud infrastructure, what we will do as a managed services provider, we'll go in a consultative approach where we will do an assessment of your digital estate presently, plan the best approach to move to the cloud environment based on whatever assessment has been done on that. And this is an assessment which is done with certain tools which come in from our side, which comes with the experienced people who do an assessment on that particular environment. And based on that, they give the best plan to move to a cloud environment. And then once that plan is created, executing that plan to make sure that there is a minimal disruption. I'm saying minimal. Yes, the intent is to have zero downtime. That also can be done if there is a DC and DR. But if it is only a single platform or a single data center that you're looking at, there would be a cutoff time. And that's why I'm saying minimal disruption. Okay. And that can be planned over a weekend or on a holiday. So those are certain things which can be done. But once that migration has been done, you also need to look at that you manage it well. And that's the routine management that we do as a managed services provider. But when you're utilizing this cloud environment, one of the benefits that you have is the agility that you get. You can spin off your IT infrastructure at any point in time. But that leads to shadow IT because you may have spun off certain VMs on the cloud environment for a specific project. But once the project was over, who takes care of that redundancy which was built in and whether it has to be taken off? So those are certain optimizations that we do as part of the routine managed services environment that we do. And also look at how do you re-innovate to upgrade into new platform services which are available from the platform perspective also. So those are some of the things which we do in a consultative manner with our customers. And what we are saying here is the simplification of migration that we do, where we are talking about a cloud assessment. And cloud assessment without cost analytics is nothing, because when you are moving into cloud, it is important to see that you get a view about what would be your monthly outflow from that particular environment. And based on that, you plan, you look at what migration tools would be required, and then you migrate that onto the cloud environment. And there are actually 6 R's that are the best practices which are called by AWS, and we go by that. First is rehost the application, which is lift and shift that application into a cloud environment. Over a period of time, look at what are some of the platform services which are available on AWS, and then do a replatforming. That means you are using a certain database. Can you put it on a RDS or a relational database as a service from the platform, which is AWS platform. Once that is done, relook at whether you want to do a repurchasing of some of the things which are available on the marketplace to optimize your IT infrastructure. And in that journey, if you are modernizing your application, you also look at refactoring. That means you re-architect your application to best utilize the platform which is there. And if there are certain things which need to be retired and certain things to be retained, those are certain things which are taken into account. And that's something which we do as part of the migration which we do for our customers. But when you are doing this and when you are looking at refactoring, where you're looking at modernizing your application, we as a managed services partner will also help you in creating the automation for CI/CD pipeline, which is continuous integration and continuous deployment, where development teams and the operation teams come together and work as a single team to make sure in an automated way those applications are deployed in a faster way on the containerized environment. These are true for cloud native applications. So this would be a journey which you would be taking, although you may be using an ISV within your organization. But in times to come, those ISVs will leverage these technologies and re-architect their applications. So at that point in time, a managed services partner like Tata Communications will be able to help you to migrate to something called as EKS, which is Elastic Kubernetes Services, which is nothing but a containerized platform to support the cloud native applications in a modernized microservices-based architecture. So what we are here saying is that once that has been done, what you need to look at is a continuous monitoring and optimization, where you look at monitoring and management, you look at what are your budgets that you have defined. One of the things which we have done from our managed services perspective is we call it as 4Cs. We give customers a view about what is the cloud consumption that they are having. Based on that consumption, we can tell the cost analytics. That means we can predictively, based on the historical usage, we can tell predictively for next 3 months what would be your monthly budget for the utilization of cloud services. That helps you to have a meaningful discussion with your CFO. And this can be automated. And this can be automated with CI/CD pipeline, which I was talking about, so that you can create environment which is using new services and also making sure that you're complying. So one of the things which we have done as part of our managed services platform is that we have created a platform on which you can create your policies, which could be related to security or other IT services policy that you may define, which could be related to your industry. It could be PCI DSS or a HIPAA or even your internal IT policies. So how do you make sure that whenever a customer or whenever an end user is creating an environment on AWS kind of environment, it is meeting the IT policy that you have done. And if there is anyone who's going way off from that, it will alert the people who are responsible for that security compliance policy, that such and such thing has happened. And that's the service management that we do with the industry best practices. So that's something which we bring to the customers. But when we are talking about all this, what is also important is to understand that you get a fast network to connect between these environments. And that's where we as a network service provider bring in various network options, be it internet, MPLS, point-to-point connect, or SD-WAN. Or when we are talking of a public cloud services, they have a service like in AWS, you talk about direct connect, which is a 10 gig Ethernet port which they deliver. What we do is basically we bring that port to your own data center and create a high-speed, low-latency network between these two environments. This comes through our MPLS network. So what we have done is we have taken that direct connect port and connected it with our MPLS. And thus we are giving you a definitive latency between these two environments. So that's on the network side. But what is also important is how do you create an environment which is secure? And that's where you look at security, which could be in form of identity and access management. These could be your privilege, identity or access management, or even cloud access services brokerage. Because if you are using multiple cloud environments, how do you make sure that you have policies across those environments? So that's something which we will deliver. Perimeter security, which would include your firewall, next generation firewall, or web application firewalls, or it could include the network services with more and more distributed denial attacks which are happening, how do you make sure that you mitigate those or manage those? That's something which we'll be able to do. But not only restricting to that, we also help in customers in doing the endpoint management, which is related to anti-malware, anti-phishing, antivirus, as well as making sure that when data is deployed on these environments, it is encrypted and is integrated with the key management system for this. All this could be integrated with the security and incident management, event alert management system from our side. So these are some of the services that we deliver along with the cloud environment. But what is also important for your perspective is that when you are going for these, you are getting a partner who is not only meeting the regional requirements. So we are a MATI empaneled partner. We are also GDPR and MTCS level 3. MTCS level 3 is for Singapore. GDPR is for the Europe region. Or it could be industry regulations, which could be in form of PCI DSS or HIPAA or any other kind of high trust is another one which we have. And similarly, IT services management certification, which includes SOC 1, SOC 2, and even looking at ISMS or SMS kind of this thing, and making sure that we also have personal identifiable information security processes taken care of, which is ISO 27017 and 18, to make sure that the data which is getting stored is managed in that way that you are assured that you have all the best practices which are there. So moving on, what are some of the use cases that you can look at? One such use case could be that you could have some workloads running on a private cloud like ISO Private Cloud, and some workloads which could be running on a AWS environment. Obviously, when we deliver it and we manage it for the customer, we call it as ISO Managed Cloud for AWS. But this is nothing but AWS services managed through us. But what we are giving here is basically a high-speed connectivity between these two environments using ISO Private Connect and Direct Connect services from AWS. End-to-end service delivered via Tata Communications. So that's one use case. The other use case could be that you have some workloads running either on our private cloud or on-premise data center or in a managed hosting environment, and you are looking at DR as a service. Again, there we as a partner can work with you to create that DR environment on ISO Managed Cloud for AWS, which is the AWS infrastructure managed through Tata Communications with all the connectivity. So I'm making it very simple, but that's something which we have done for a lot of our customers. If I have to talk about one such use case for one of our customers, I can't name the customer, but it is a leading online retailer. They were looking at improving their go-to-market because whenever they had an offer which they wanted to roll out, it used to be minimum a month for them to roll out that option. And they were looking at automating that process between the development team and operations team. And that's where we automated the CI/CD release pipeline for them. And that's something which enabled them to make any offer to their customer within days instead of months. Basically, now it has become within days they are able to do. So that's the faster time to market which they were looking at. And they were also looking at that they get the scale which they were anticipating for such offers to come on this particular platform. So that's something which we have done along with AWS. So AWS is the underlying platform using their Kubernetes services and various other services like relational data services, RDS services, as well as automating some of those pipelines for them. And DevOps management is something which we will do for them. Another use case that I can talk of, or case study that I can talk of, is Anand Bazar Patrika. They were aiming to have an app-based news platform, and they were looking at a partner who would be able to help them not only create a platform for today, but also it should be resilient and should be able to scale over a period of time. So what we have done basically is that we've integrated AWS services, which includes the ECS or the compute services, S3, Lambda, and other services. But not only that, we have also made sure that we have IT services management compliance over that particular. So it's fully managed services from our side, which we are giving. With that, I'm moving on to the second poll question which I had. Kiran, if you can, Krishna, if you can put in that the second poll question, which is which cloud services you think can enable your current business objectives? And the question, the various options are hybrid cloud infrastructure deployment, cloud migration, cloud infrastructure management to drive cost savings, application modernization with DevOps adoption, or adopting SAP HANA, because that's one of the enterprise workloads which we see most of the customers are exploring to be deployed on the cloud environment. So there are 30 seconds for answering that. Thank you for your answers. We'll shortly have the results from that poll question as well. So as you see, 50% of the people who have joined this are saying that hybrid cloud infrastructure is something which they are looking at, followed by application modernization, which is 18%, with cloud migration around 10%. So these are the top three that we have. But clearly, people are looking at a cloud infrastructure deployment for their cloud journey, which they are looking for. So with that, I'll move on. What I want to state here is that we can simplify your cloud journey, which could include reduction in time to deploy new compute resources. It could mean reduction of IT infrastructure cost. Obviously, it varies from customer to customer, but this is the average that we have seen. Looking at that you have your high availability available with fewer support calls received per week. Improved unplanned downtime, because this could be in a highly available environment where it can be deployed in multiple availability zones on AWS environment, which can be created, and thus improving the IT infrastructure staff timing for them to spend that time on more useful planning activities which they can do for potential revenue growth within their own environment. So that's something which we can enable as a partner for your digital journey when you're looking at a cloud partner for yourself. What we are leaving here is that we as Tata Communication will be happy to see if we can be your partner of choice. Please schedule a consultation with our SME or a subject matter expert on this. This is the barcode that is there, or you can go to this URL link and subscribe for a scheduled consultation from our side, where we'll be happy to work with you and explain it to you what are various things which we can do along with you in your cloud transformation journey, digital transformation journey. So with that, thank you, Krishna. I'm handing it over back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajesh, for those insights. I could see a lot of interest, like a lot of questions for you, Rajesh. You can respond to them over the chat window, or we can take those questions during the Q&A session, whatever you feel okay. Moving on,
okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Rajesh. Thanks for your presentation again. So moving on, we have another exciting presentation. Let me invite now Ganesh Shahani, Partner Solution Architect, Amazon Internet Services India Limited, to share his thoughts on the topic. With that, over to you, Ganesh. Welcome and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Krishna. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So greetings to all. Thank you everyone for joining today in this session. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm Ganesh Sani, a Partner Solutions Architect in AWS, and I'm glad to share some insights on application migration and modernization. So to start with, what sets AWS apart? So customers have selected AWS for the past 12 years because we have proven ourselves committed to customer success. We believe that we stand apart in market because of 6 factors: experience, service breadth and depth, pace of innovation, global footprint, pricing philosophy, and the partner ecosystem. So as you can see on the screen, from the experience standpoint, we have been building and managing cloud since 2006 with a wide experience of multiple customers out there globally. From the service breadth and depth, we have more than 175 services to support any of your cloud work. And we are constantly improving and increasing services and features in those services. We have constantly been, innovating around the capabilities that we have in cloud, and the history of rapid and customer-driven releases is actually out there for you to have visibility on that on that particular point. From the global footprint, we have 24 regions as we speak, with 76 availability zones and more than 199 edge locations. And we are constantly increasing these regions, availability zones, and edge locations. From the pricing philosophy, we do, as you can see on the screen, we have, 80 times we have proactively reduced the prices till date. So we believe in, giving the benefits of the economies of scale back to our customers, and that's where it shows. From the ecosystem, we have thousands of consulting and the SIs and technology partners who can actually who have been collaborating in this our APN ecosystem. So in this slide, I thought I'll just name a couple of customers, couple of enterprise customers. So you can clearly see that AWS has been trusted by the industry leaders, and they are actually building their workloads on AWS. So without a further ado, let me jump to our main topic, which is around migration and modernization. So you as a customer can transform your business faster with AWS. By moving to AWS Cloud, you can migrate critical applications and free up your IT resources, create an environment for your company, to innovate around your application. It helps you in scaling your business globally with resiliency and high availability. It also helps you in ensuring the security and compliance is at place. So before we actually start with modernization, let's first discuss about a couple of facts and couple of features about how you can actually migrate and what are the advantages that you get after migrating to AWS. So let's look at some of the benefits of large-scale migrations to AWS. The first and the foremost point is the lower cost. Customers typically save in approximately 30% of their cost on the infrastructure. Just to quote a data point around it, an IDC study of AWS customers shows an 60% improvement in productivity of IT infrastructure staff and 25% higher developer productivity. From the momentum perspective, our most successful customers like Capital One tell us that once they made bold plans to migrate to AWS, it created the momentum for their staff to learn new skills and forced needed changes to the processes. From the agility perspective, customers who adopt modern application development practices in cloud are actually delivering on average 3 times the number of features that they would have done earlier. And just to mention, there are a couple of leading customers like News Corp, FINRA, FICO, and GE Healthcare who have already seen, huge benefits by moving to AWS, by migrating their workloads to AWS, and have also publicly documented the benefits that they received. So this was more towards the migration perspective. Now let's discuss a little bit about the modernization perspective. While all of this may sound great, you may be asking yourself, how do I take my existing applications and turn them into the modern applications out there? So let's explore that journey. So CIOs tells us, that cost is not the key factor in the decision to move the cloud. Agility and innovation are usually at the center of their motivation. However, being at least cost neutral in the table stakes, before considering any migration to the cloud is also actually very important. So when it comes to the cost and the TCO perspective, it's actually a very important thing, to consider when you are actually dealing with your application. So we typically see at least 20% of the saving with just a lift and shift approach. So on the screen, you can see on the very left hand side, the red bar actually shows the application which is there on-premise. And once you do a lift and shift to AWS, you can clearly see, we have typically seen at least 20% of the saving right there. Over the first month, customer continues to optimize their EC2 instances, which is basically, the compute or the VM, resources for additional 10 to 20% of saving. And gradually by adopting higher level of services, customers further optimize, many even seeing 60% or more savings as well. So if you build a truly AWS optimized and a modern application on AWS, you can clearly see on the right hand side that your TCO gets reduced with a very high amount. So most applications don't start off going from a monolithic approach to microservices directly. Customers generally tend to make improvements along the making their applications to a truly optimized workload wherein they leverage serverless and even fully managed services that are available in AWS. So, just to mention here, while we may prefer to flip a switch, the reality is that moving from monolithic to microservices is a journey, just like modernization and it doesn't happen overnight. But the good news is that there are patterns used by many enterprises, including Cox Automotive, which can actually help you in simplifying that particular transition. So you might be, thinking that why modern applications? What are the benefits that we get, with modern applications? So customers are building modern applications by changing their people, process, technology, so that they can innovate faster and be more frequent, and can actually bring those innovations out there to the market faster, all while reducing the cost and building more reliable applications. So we truly are, witnessing a paradigm shift, and it's driven by our customers working backwards from where they needed to do the win in the market. So businesses now want to win more customers. To win more customers, they need to build better products and to release features faster, which requires faster and more frequent experimentation and innovation. They need the ability to focus on differentiated business logic and to decouple software of software in order to have speed and safety simultaneously. So we no longer live in a world where a single database or an architectural option is being chosen by successful customers. AWS is providing ways for the customers to shrink the scope, offload the undifferentiated pieces, choose the right tool for the job, and automate everything. By doing so, you can actually build a modern application that allows you to win customers, your end clients, and help you in building a modern application that can actually lead to all the benefits that we discussed earlier. So with the evolution of compute as such, there are options to further simplify our operations. Customers tell us that containers are great, but managing the infrastructure in undifferentiated heavy lifting from them, it's actually a heavy lifting kind of thing for them, managing the infrastructure as such. So too much of their time is spent corralling the infrastructure, and not enough time is spent on the code, the application, or the application architecture, which is where the focus should be. So serverless basically helps you write your code and let somebody else worry about your infrastructure, and that's where the benefit resides. Just to elaborate on that, serverless actually removes the undifferentiated heavy lifting, that is, the server operations, and reducing your operation load. This allows you as an application builder to focus on building applications and creating value for your end user, for your end customer, rather than managing and caring about scaling of your infrastructure to support the application. That is something that is done by AWS. You can actually concentrate on building innovative applications and creating value for your customers, for your end users. So a couple of modernization scenario, which our previous speaker as well discussed on, but yeah, I'll just give a couple of more insights here. So a couple of modernization scenarios are like re-architecting, lift and shift, and refactor. So as you likely know, AWS has a shared responsibility model with customer, where AWS is responsible for certain aspects of infrastructure or system, and their part that AWS customers take the responsibility for. AWS provides many options that allows you to choose the right amount of control and configurability. That said, as you move from left to right, you can actually offload more and more of your responsibility to AWS. Just to give you an example, by using the fully managed database DynamoDB, all you need to do is create tables, put the data inside those tables, and query the data. There is no need for you to manage the infrastructure. Quality of service is built in, and there are set of knobs and dials to configure the database to meet your system needs, to meet your application needs. I recommend starting, on the right, and actually looking at the scenarios that are there out there. This will actually benefit you as an application builder. So because your goal should be to do less if your goal, the end goal is actually to do less, you will actually end up making benefits out of that. As you can see on the right, all that a customer has to manage with AWS Lambda is just the application code. That this means that you can actually innovate more quickly and frequently, and you can actually deliver more value by actually spending lesser time on the unimportant jobs out there. Okay. So, a common question out there when customers are actually working with a serverless kind of approach is which is more appropriate? Which is more appropriate? What should we actually use? Should it be AWS Lambda or should be AWS Fargate? But just to give you a couple of differentiating points, with Lambda, developers write code in units called function and define a trigger to run those particular codes. So Lambda starts, stops, and scales automatically based on the usage load it actually receives, and the scaling and throughput parameters that you actually define while configuring your Lambda function. AWS takes care of the provisioning, scaling, patching, managing the underlying server. That's something that's taken care by AWS. With AWS Fargate on the right hand side, you can actually run your containers without having to manage your servers or clusters. You no longer have to provision, configure, or scale your clusters of VMs to run these containers. This removes the need to choose the server type, decide when to scale up, optimize the cluster packing. All those kind of heavy lifting is removed with Fargate. That's basically the basic difference between Lambda and Fargate. Speaking of the right tool for the job, let's talk about how this new architecture impacts your database and data management, which is one of the most critical things out there in an application and during your journey of your modernizing your application. If you think about each of these ships out there, each of these diagrams out there as microservices, the on the very left hand side, the mothership that you actually see is the database. You can see that how this common dependency, this monolithic database can hold you back, can hold back the broader fleet that's there on the very right side. So there are actually better ways to design your microservices. When it comes to the data, if you're designing your microservices like we did at Amazon, where business logic and data management is actually hidden behind a hardened API, you can more easily change, manage, and scale your data and services independently. This allows you to create more purpose-built solution while spending less time fitting your data into, for example, relational database, when what you actually need is a time series database or a quantum ledger database. So just to give you a couple examples, examples of the database offerings that we have. While we are not going to deep dive on these AWS databases today, I just wanted to quickly share the breadth of purpose-built databases that AWS offers beyond a relational databases to allow you to select the right tool for the right job. So you can see a couple of examples like Quantum Ledger Database, TimeStream, Neptune, Elastic Cache, DynamoDB, multiple database offerings out there in AWS which you can actually choose. Now, one of the most important aspect of modernization is that you should consider automating everything out there. Without further ado, let me explain that using a slide. Let's start with the release process. In the old monolithic model, you might have something that looks like this, the current diagram that you see on the screen. This was certainly the case with most of the customers out there, wherein big teams of developer were actually stepping on each other as they make change in a big monolithic app, having to batch up, coordinate the testing, releasing, causing changes to be deployed to the production slowly and infrequently. Now that the customers are trying more and more to remove the bottleneck in this particular process and decompose the agility, you actually break up your big functional organization into smaller teams, and that's what we see on the left hand side. So as you introduce microservices owned by these teams, you have now removed the bottleneck in developing the solution. but not on the testing and releasing part of it. But that is also something we do. So in a product-based delivery environment, self-service tools, and you can actually use automation to enable your DevOps team to own and manage their own release process. So creating such kind of ownership from an idea to operation actually helps in increasing the agility for your team, and this leads to a very fast innovation, and helps you as a customer to reach your end user quite fast. So just to quote you a couple of more examples of the customers out there using the best practices for modern application development. These customers have already stated benefits that they were able to receive. Just to give you an example, it's the ability to reduce the overall compute cost by 95%. That's what FICO actually did. Coca-Cola as a customer also was able to cut the processing time from a day and a half down to 10 seconds. The agility to deliver on critical initiatives actually helped FINRA in actually benefiting a lot. And also, Washington Post was, just by modernizing their application, was able to deliver releases at a rate of 50 plus deployments per hour. That's a very huge number for any application, development company. So these were a couple of examples. Without further ado, I would recommend everyone to please post your questions. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. And that's my time. Thank you, everyone. Back to you, Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Ganesh, for that. That was an enlightening session. In fact, with Rajesh and Ganesh joining us, I would request Rajesh and Ganesh to be there because you need to join an exciting panel now. And now it's time to get into another exciting conversation. And for that, let me welcome once again Rajesh and Ganesh, of course. And with them, Jagdish Lomte, CIO Thermex, Amandeep Bawa, Group Head IT, Apps and Infra, Panasonic, Sanjay Prasad, CIO, CESC Power Group. And to moderate this conversation, we have with us today Sudhin Baraukar, Global IT and Innovation Advisor. Thank you all for joining us. With that, over to you, Sudhin.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you.
Wish everyone a very warm welcome and welcome you all to this panel discussion. So let me start with the questions, and the questions are first to Amandeep as well as to Rajesh and Ganesh. And that's about really the cloud journey, the cloud strategy. And we have seen several flip-flops in relation to the past with the cloud. So now, post-COVID world, is it that we have a firmed up strategy, and how can we take this journey ahead with the help of managed service?
Yeah, thank you, Sudhin, and good morning, everyone. Sudhin rightly highlighted there have been a lot of flip-flops since the cloud journey has started. Some good years back, some 10 to 15 years back. So I believe the industry was more cautious about the security as well as the adaptability of the cloud and how the business will understand the reason why we should adopt cloud more than having our own data centers on premise. So I think there has been quite a insightful journey. What probably I could see in last 10 years, where people have started focusing more towards the benefits, which talks about the elasticity, which talks about the overall reason why we should have rightful investment in right place, and we should be linear in terms of our infrastructure as well as the services which we provide. So I believe the learning towards this has been like where we have large data centers already supporting us onto a lot of services, and then now we are moving towards the agility, where the applications and the business is more demanding in terms of how the service should be and how the end customer should be respond. So I believe during those flip flops, what we have experienced, we came to the overall strategy where we should focus more towards the environment which is more open towards the applications, more open towards the access which provide where the earlier access was limited to our internal users, whereas now the access is beyond our internal users to the end customers. So I think that is the reason why the environment gradually got more open, and that helped for the COVID situation, where our end users also moved out of our office premises. They have also started connecting from their homes remotely and more security. So I think that has been the quite reason why during the COVID time, uh, the impact to the organization has not been uh, adverse or highly adverse, considering that how we are adopting the cloud.
Yeah, so just to continue and ask the question to Ganesh and Rajesh, especially uh, you all spoke about the managed services, uh, and Ganesh also spoke about the use of microservices, serverless. So how much of these innovations and these latest features and functions are being deployed at the customer end?
Okay. So so then, obviously, when we talk to any enterprise, everyone has their own cloud journey, and all of them would be in different phases of their deployment. As I highlighted, we talk about 6 Rs, which is the best practices defined by AWS, which is where we say the first step is to lift and shift that application onto the cloud environment so that there is a minimal disruption there. So it's more like a rehosting the application. That's the first space that we've seen. A lot of customers have already done that. But we have also seen a lot of those customers are now looking at replatforming that services. When I'm saying replatforming, what they are doing is they are using some of the platform services which are available, which Ganesh spoke about, that you have EKS, or which is the container services managed through Kubernetes, or you have Lambda function, which is function as a service for an event trigger based adoption, or the other platform services, which could include even the databases. So yes, when you may be within your own data center, you may have deployed, let's say, a MySQL or a Oracle database or a MS SQL database. However, when you do a replatforming, you could look at the AWS RDS services, which could be Oracle RDS, or it could be even the Aurora database coming in from AWS also. So we have seen some of the customers who have done this migration. So if you ask me, in enterprise space, today around 60% to 70% of users are in this phase of moving to the cloud, which is where they have rehosted and replatformed onto the uh, cloud platform. But there are certain use cases where customers have gone to look at refactoring also. I was giving one example of one of the online retail company. They were deployed on a private cloud earlier, but they decided to move to AWS because they wanted to automate the release cycle for any of the new offers which they wanted to roll out. We've also spoken to some of the BFSI segment customers where they are looking at system of, so if you talk about banking customers, they talk about systems of record and systems of engagement. System of records are like core banking or core insurance, whereas the systems of engagement are where they engage with the end customer. So this could be payment gateways, or this could be internet banking or online things which they are doing. Those modules are certain things which they are looking at refactoring, where they are deploying uh, a new microservices based architecture for the application, and thus looking at underlying infrastructure to support that. But yes, that's a journey where people have started moving into more from a enterprise customer base I'm talking about. Yes, obviously there will be some customers which are born in cloud. They have cloud native applications from the very beginning. So they will straight away go into those kind of environments which Ganesh was talking about, which can be embedded into their services. Ganesh, you want to
Yeah,
add?
thanks, Rajesh. So Ganesh, we have
Yeah, sure. So just to add
Sorry,
to,
Rajesh. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So hi, this is Ganesh.
Yeah. So,
Please.
yeah, Ganesh, just to interrupt you. So, we have seen a lot of disruptions taking place on the development side, right? We've seen something called as LCNC, low code, no code. On the security side, we have seen some things like security model management, security posture management. We also have the CASB kind of innovations. So how are these innovations being transferred at the customer end? Does it mean that we have to also build up the developer, system? What about the application skill sets? Reskilling. How is that really transferring? So I know that AWS has done a lot of innovations in the space. You all also release, I think every 11 seconds you all have some release on your stack. So how is this transferring at the customer end?
Okay. To start with, I'll just give a couple of insights here. You know, we are actually in the midst of titanic shift to the cloud, and there are a couple of reasons why people are actually now moving so quickly. The first is the cost. With the cloud, you don't have to actually lay out the capital upfront for the servers and the data centers, and you instead get to pay for it as you consume it, as a variable expense. And if you have ever had to provision infrastructure, you'll know that you either have to decide to provision the provision on the low side, and then if it turns out that you don't have enough, you end up creating a customer outage, which most people don't actually choose for. So instead, customer provision for the peak, and you rarely sit at the peak for the long. And in that kind of scenario, you end up, spending more than you actually have to. So in cloud, you just provision what you need, and if it turns out that you need less, you give it back to us and stop paying for it. The variable expense is actually lower than what virtually every company can do on its own, because AWS has such large scale that we pass on to the customers in form of lower prices. In fact, as I mentioned during my slides, we have lowered our prices 80 times since AWS was launched in 2006. So cost is definitely a very compelling and almost always the conversation starter. But the number one reason that enterprise and governments are actually moving to the cloud is the agility and speed with which they can actually change the customer experience. If you look at most of the companies on-premise infrastructure, to get a typical server, it takes around 10 to 12 weeks, sometimes even longer. And then you have to build all this surrounding infrastructure software like compute, storage, database, analytics, ML. In cloud, you can actually provision thousands of servers in minutes across 175 services that you can actually put together and use however you want. So you get an idea. You get from an idea to from an idea to implementation, several orders of magnitude faster. That's really attractive. And if you want, I can share. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ganesh. So moving on to next question is, and this is for the customer side journeys, especially for Jagdish, Sanjay, and again Amandeep. And so we have seen the using cloud for mission critical services. Raji just spoke about the system of record and system of engagement. Coming from the bank side of it, in 2017, 2018, as head of innovation at State Bank of India, we were one of the first large banks, one of the top global banks, where we implemented Microsoft O365 on the cloud. Way back in 2012, in Barclays, we did use the AWS cloud platform for our Asian region as well as our UK and West Europe region. Right now, we are looking at a lot of the banks are looking at moving a lot of their mission critical workloads to the cloud. Right. So the question to Jagdish and Sanjay and Amandeep is that, let's say for let's take the manufacturing perspective from engineering and manufacturing perspective for Jagdish. And the question is that, do you see that the cloud is going to become the base or hub for mission critical services? And what challenges do you face? Because when you deal with mission critical services, in your case ERP and related systems, how do you make sure that those systems are at a high SLA, they are secured, and that customers can, use those services, both, your internal staff and your customers can, use those services. So Jagdish, what are the challenges you face, and do you think that most of your mission critical workloads would be, migrated to the cloud?
Yeah, thanks, Sudhin. Basically, when we talk about cloud journey, as a Thermax, as we are in project as well as product as well as services domain, we started this journey long back, that is maybe 4 or 5 years back, where we started first with O365, as you rightly mentioned, and then our email platform was moved on cloud. Another thing which we started with the engineering, that is PLM, which is very important in terms of project management as well as engineering and drawing perspective. That was our second step towards cloud. We moved PLM on cloud, and yes, our engineering team is now able to access work and ensure remote working through cloud. Another journey which is very important about operational critical is ERP. So recently we have moved our even LN ERP, which is Info ERP, on cloud. We have taken AWS as a partner, and then yes, definitely it has now helping us for working remotely during this pandemic situation. Our entire workforce is able to work from home without any challenges. Yes, there are challenges, definitely, but it was a smooth journey when we moved our important things on cloud. Like as I mentioned, Salesforce is another thing which is also helping us on from marketing and sales perspective working through cloud. So these are the areas where our mission critical operations we have moved on cloud. And definitely our virtualization platform, which is Citrix, which is helping our employees to work from home efficiently. So these are the areas where we have moved on cloud, and yes, our roadmap is ready to enhance it further. But as you rightly mentioned, the challenges, yes, definitely we need to look first important thing is about cost optimization, because it is a revenue cost. So when we are spending on cloud, definitely we have to keep our eyes on the sessions which are on. How do we optimize? How do we utilize maybe the working time and then closing time? Say at the end of the day or in the night, how do we monitor the usage of cloud? How do we maintain those? The third part is about even using additional features of cloud. Definitely we need to be very vigilant and use those very efficiently. Yes, there are features available, but you need to pay for those all additional features. So that way, how smartly you negotiate with partners, and then yes, definitely they are coming up with good options. But that is another thing. And definitely, Sudhin, as you mentioned about security, yes, we are now thinking of having our enterprise level security center, which is a security operating center, which will take care of definitely SIM, which is security information and event management. And another thing which is coming up is about SOAR, which is security orchestration, automation, and response. So under SOC, how do we have this sort of platforms readily, and then managing entire cloud with the proper security perspective. Awareness to employees definitely is very important factor, which is also another thing we are taking forward. And yes, one important thing which I just want to talk about, PDPF, which is Personal Data Protection and Framework, right? That is coming up now. India also will be coming up with PDPF sort of logic and then practices, where our cloud journey should take care of these things. So yes, we are towards cloud journey. We're taking care of all these challenges. Thank you, Sunita. Yeah.
Great. We have both worked on various Club Pune initiatives on emerging technology as cloud. Thanks a lot, Jagdish, for sharing this. So moving on to Sanjay, and let's talk about the power, energy, utilities, as well as the retail sector. And this is having a lot of workloads, a lot of data, right? How are you managing this? And do you think that a cloud-first strategy, or do you think that moving a lot of these workloads to the cloud would really help your organization?
Thank you, Sudhin, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to this session. Uh, the word cloud first, I would like to use it as cloud next, coming from the brick and mortar industry that I represent largely, though obviously the retail footprint is a little different than utilities. So, if you step back a little and see in terms of what cloud is, in terms of the three pillars, it is infrastructure, platform, and software. And that could be as a service. We keep that as one, as one of the axes, and we look at a combination of private, hosted, and public, and then of course a hybrid. So using these two axes, we sort of plot the processes and criticality and see where one could really move on to the cloud, looking at, of course, cost as an angle besides agility and ease of management and scalability. So if you look at the pre-COVID scenario in terms of, you know, lot of mindset change is required to make sure that even able to think that critical elements could move on to the cloud. But with the COVID situation, the infrastructure and collaboration piece were the first ones to kick off, and which actually got a lot of end user and management attention that yes, things could run well on the cloud infrastructure, and then look at pieces of applications that could be on the cloud. So it's having said that, it doesn't mean that it's a non-starter in terms of looking at the consumer perspective. Obviously, delivery is first paramount if you were to move up the chain, and then is convenience. And when I say convenience, in terms of making sure ability to transact with the utility, view where they are with respect to their billing, consumerization, etc. In terms of demand management initiatives. So to that extent, obviously, we have come a long way, and the last 3-4 months have actually accentuated that confidence and making sure that more as behave more as a retailer and interact with the consumers to make them feel yes, they are the customers. So that is on the billing and the commercial piece. On the criticality of data, so with the event of smart meters, a lot of data needs to be aggregated and analyzed. So that is, and then of course archived for future exploitation. So that obviously becomes a candidate for a cloud pilot, and that obviously in a very small way we have been successful in aggregation of such data. On the other hand, bots which run out of cloud, in terms of we have obviously implemented a chatbot. Now we are looking at vernacular voice bots to actually ease the load on the call center personnel, especially when there are peaks and spikes, because then you actually it's a difficult case to manage your workload within your contact center. And of course, there is a challenge, as the deregulation happens, how to manage behind the meter analysis on the cloud. So these are some of the things that we are looking at for the future, and we expect that a combination of all this, bringing the critical data. Another point that I missed out was obviously GIS. GIS earlier used to be a heavy-duty desktop game, but of late, people are looking at webified GIS options as well. But the heavy lifting with respect to design and data creation at the initial stages, that is still very much localized server-based game. In terms of querying, in terms of making shifts and shifts of data, and in terms of end field access to GIS information when the maintenance staff are actually on the field, are elements where the cloud could be exploited. And of course, one also needs to see that GIS is a central, while we speak of ERP for the classical industries, ERP is a given in each of our industries as well, but GIS is the underpinning centralized piece which not only looks at ERP, customer data, SCADA, to really manage all the data at one place and becomes the centerpiece for management of your field infrastructure as well as your customers. So therefore, GIS will obviously take time to take off using the cloud, but we have heard, you know, movements happening globally, but in the Indian scenario, it is still some way to go. But yes, we are doing our POCs and making sure that ability to do the field management much more effectively with respect to the consumer as well as to the placement of end devices at the end consumer. That's the difference that will bring us to as a next generation utility in the days to come.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for a very detailed industry strategy. Thank you very much for sharing this. Moving on to Amandeep, and Amandeep as Group Head IT, Apps and Infra. How are you orchestrating this cloud journey, right? You have big data, you have IoT, you have now 5G coming up, you have a lot of analytics, you may have end-use computing programs. It's a lot of stuff that you got to orchestrate and use the cloud to leverage the emerging tech to help do this, right? So how are you doing this? Considering that there would be a lot of data both from the consumer end, there would be also a lot of machine kind of data. How are you? How do you feel you can? Is cloud suited best for this, or do you think it will still take some time?
So I think, Sudhin, the cloud is the only answer to it. When you talk about the huge chunk of data and the huge information which is getting, every second getting saved onto your environment. So cloud is the only answer for that matter, because if you go for the on-prem environment, you have to do a lot of investment, and where you are not very sure, the volume of data your business may grow. Because we do investments when we are launching the products, when you're launching the thing, but at that time there are certain planning or there are certain expectations, but still there's always an iota of point where you do not really 100% sure that how the product will go, how the success will happen, whether it would be beyond your capacity what you expect, or like you may have to reduce the volume basis on the how the business is growing, and then change over to the new environment, change over to new strategy. And so those kind of factors are very important. And with IoT and ML and the Industry 4.0, which is coming in, and all the manufacturing areas, and the teams are really moving to Industry 4.0, where the systems have to talk to each other. The environment, the applications have to work in a tandem, in sync. So all these factors are quite important for any business which is running in this age right now. And for the same, it's very important for you to have a platform where you have low investment, where you have larger flexibilities, and then you can always leverage on these two areas and move forward and support business in multiple aspects. So I think that is what is being advocated and adapted, and business is very well aware of. Thankfully, the business today is quite aware of what cloud is and how the things are moving. And thanks to the partners like AWS, Tata, and other ones who are educating us more and more often on these areas, and not just the IT fraternity, but beyond that, so that people are much aware of how we can leverage the strength of IT, which used to be just considered as a backbone, but now it's been on a front runner while executing the projects, while executing the business new models. So IT is just partnering in the front rather than being at the back.
Great. Thanks. Thanks. So just going to Rajesh and Ganesh, we are seeing a lot of emergence of a lot of workloads, especially on the emerging tech side, AI workloads, blockchain workloads, a whole lot of automation workloads. In terms of these specialized workloads on the cloud, as well as what are the innovations you all have done around HPC, like high performance computing, to help process so much data, to do complex event processing? What are the innovations, and what can you offer customers as they go ahead on their transformation journey?
So then, again, on the HPC or these specialized workloads, I think as AWS as a partner, what we see is that we have a plethora of options which are available. One of the things which we see for such requirements, you have GPU-enabled VMs which are available on the cloud environment, which can be utilized for creating an environment which can be used for HPC kind of workload which customers are exploring. So those are certain things which we see are being asked for also. And I'm just taking cue from Jagdish's pointer, where he was talking about their PLM and users are using this on cloud environment as well. For one of the customers, without naming the customers, they were looking at during this pandemic time, they wanted to make sure that people who were using these high-end desktops on their environment should be accessible to them for doing the high-end graphics work which they were doing for their for their products or the end customers which they were working on. So creating a virtual desktop environment to access those systems itself was one of the requirements which can be deployed on the cloud kind of environment. And we have AWS Workspaces as one of the options which is available from a virtual desktop environment perspective, which can be enabled even on the GPU-based VMs, thus can be utilized for doing the high-end configuration. So those are some of the options which are available. I'm sure Ganesh would be able to add more, which they are innovating day on day. But this is something which we saw in our engagements with the customer, where customers have utilized GPU-based systems, either for putting up an HPC environment or even using desktops to create high-end graphics capability to support those requirements.
Rajesh, just to add your point, good that you have raised that point. The virtual graphical desktop concept, which is very important for engineering users to access drives. So which has helped us actually. We have implemented VGPU, that is virtual graphical environment, with hybrid sort of workforce. So that is really helping in this situation. So this is good solution. Yeah. Thanks.
Great to see. Great to see engineering and manufacturing companies really take up this, because I'm sure they will have to grapple. You all will have to grapple with a lot of workloads, especially on the HPC side. Ganesh, just to continue this question, we did a lot of innovations like cloud bursting way back. Do you see that to help cope with GPU processing or maybe HPC processing, some of the innovations like cloud bursting can be done?
Hey, Sunil, sorry, I was not able to hear that question properly, but yeah, to what I understand, we are talking about GPU instances, right? So we at AWS, have the most powerful GPU instances for machine learning, training, and graphic workloads with our EC2 P3DN instances. And for running machine learning at scale and in production, our new Inference 1 instances for EC2, which are powered by AWS Inference chip, have the lowest cost per inference instances in the cloud. We have the fastest processor in the cloud. We as an AWS has the fastest processor in the cloud with the EC2 Z1D instances, sustained turbo clock speed of 4.0 gigahertz, and the largest in-memory instances as well, in case you want to run your SAP workloads.
So when you say in memory, you're talking something similar to in-memory databases. That's what we had deployed using SaaS and Teradata way back some years back. Is that similar?
So when I talk in memory, I am basically talking mostly about the SAP workloads. So we have instances which can actually go for 24 TB of memory as well, which can actually scale up to that particular scale.
Fantastic. Thank you. So last question before we take up the questions from the participants, from the audience. And this is to Jagdish, Sanjay, and Amandeep. Just you have to answer this in 10-15 seconds, not more than that. One good and one bad thing about the cloud, especially with regards to governance, risk, and compliance, and also with all the security standards. Just one what has gone bad, and one response on what has gone down well so far.
Yeah. One thing which is very important, plus point is about the scalability, which is helping us, and yes, that is really the plus point. But if you talk about the challenges in terms of security, yes, we need to build a stronger security infrastructure as well as platform, which will take care of cloud journey.
Great, thank you, Jagdish. Sanjay?
Yeah, if you follow that left to right cycle, I think that's going to give a lot of dividends in terms of lift and shift. While you do lift and shift, also do the right sizing and scalability so that you don't end up correcting the errors later on when you want to move to the more mature microservices pieces. That's a plus point because you have the benefit of the life cycle, and it's up to you to manage how you go forward and not to a knee-jerk reaction and move on to the cloud. In terms of governance, I think when I had a chance to work on the preparatory piece of the bill before it's still to become an act. One needs to work very closely with your cloud provider because you need to really bring out the essence of while you are a data processor, where you are handling the data on behalf of the consumer, your data controller becomes much more complicated in terms of because that's the person who will be accountable. So you have to make sure that the provider is along with you, because in terms of the risks that you carry, if there's a 15 crore or a 4% of global revenue, if your whatever is PII data and sensitive data is not processed as per the mandates of the bill, and therefore you need to be really careful and work very closely with the provider. So that's a risk in the long term that one needs to take care of.
Great, thank you, Sanjay.
Yeah, so I completely agree with the fellow panelist on this one. Whereas what I believe the security is something which is not defined or attached to the data center or the cloud. It depends upon how you maintain that. So your private data center or your data center in your own premise can be highly vulnerable if you do not implement security. And similarly, you can have a very high security deployed on the public cloud also and secure your environment while you do that. So there are different flavors which comes with the cloud services. And as an owner or custodian of this environment, you have to really choose well what level of security you want to define it. So I think that is something which we have to consider, and we should take care of that.
Great. Thank you all. So I think we are done with the panel discussion. Krishna, do you want to start with the question and answer session?
Thank you. Thank you, Sudhir, and all the panelists for that insightful session. And I have received a couple of queries here. I will just ask the panelists to express their views on the same. So here, the first one. Most of our corporate applications. Hello, can you hear me?
No.
Most of our corporate applications are in private data center, which cannot be exposed to public cloud due to compliance requirement costs. Please suggest how can we take benefit from hybrid cloud deployment. Anybody want to take a stab on that? Maybe Rajesh, it was just to you if you can just take a stab.
I didn't get, your voice was becoming blank in between, Krishna, but I believe what you're saying, and I'm just reading, I believe this is a question from one of the participants, that most of our corporate applications are in private data centers, which cannot be exposed to public cloud due to compliance requirement. So the pointer which I can give here is, I think compliance, when you talk from a regulatory perspective, and I'm taking an example here, BFSI seems to be the most regulated industry in that sense, or even if you talk about Mr. Sanjay Prasad's industry, which is the utilities industry, these are very regulated industries where data privacy becomes very important. Some of them also nowadays are looking at deploying their workloads for very simple reason. The industry regulators are talking about that you need to have the data residing in country. That is one of the foremost things which has to be taken care of, and that's why you see most of the cloud providers, they have their cloud nodes or multiple cloud nodes in India to support that data residency requirement. That is one of the first thing which the customers have, and hence that helps them in taking this thing. Second, from a compliance perspective, when you talk of compliance from an infrastructure perspective, most of these public cloud platforms like AWS have the maximum number of compliance to the industry compliances basically. So if you talk of PCI, DSS, you talk about HIPAA compliance, you talk of SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3 compliance, the infrastructure basically supports all those compliances which are associated with that. Over and above that, I agree there may be still some workloads which may have to reside on a private cloud or on a dedicated environment. That's where we talk about a hybrid cloud approach. So it's going to take some more time for the regulators to agree on deploying even those workloads on the public cloud environment. Thus, it is going to be a journey for our customers, and thus creating that hybrid environment is going to become very important for our customers. So I'm not saying that all workloads will move into public cloud. Yes, majority of them are today available, and customers' confidence on putting them on cloud environment is increasing. One, because these environments are very much secure, at least at a platform level. And I'll take a cue here on the security part. Security, in my view, will always remain a shared responsibility between the platform provider and the end customer. It cannot be 100% on the platform provider only, because today, when you talk of threat vectors from a cybersecurity perspective, they can be coming from any area. They could be coming from data plane, they could be coming from an application space, they could be coming from a infrastructure platform space also. So it has to be a shared responsibility, and that's something which has been accepted by the public cloud providers also, and AWS for that matter now has Guard Duty, which is one of the security incident and event management services which is available on the cloud environment. But the control for that can be with the customer also. So those are certain things which can be deployed. So it is about how paranoid you are and how you make sure that you put in the checks and balances to take care of those compliances or people moving out of those compliances. And that's where 4Cs, which I was talking about. I spoke about consumption, cost analytics. Compliance is also one of the important things which you need to look at when you're managing these environments. And that's something which we enable as a managed services provider when customers are looking to deploy these workloads on public cloud like AWS or any of the other platforms. I hope that gives some direction in that sense.
I'll just add, Rajesh made some very valid points. I'll just add to what he said. It is not a 0-1 situation, even now. So one needs to look at some of the sectors are defined as critical by NCIIPC, which is the nodal arm of the Ministry of IT, and energy and banking and financial services besides transportation, government agencies fall under that. So one needs to really define what are your critical information assets. That's the first precursor. And then break it up into your primary and your secondary data center pieces and see which are the workloads that you can move in, whether using infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service, in terms of maturity. So this is an exercise which would require a lot of getting into the processes and culling out those workloads which are amenable to the cloud. So it's not a 0-1 situation. That's what the point that I wanted to make.
I totally agree, and that has been accepted by the technology platform players like AWS and by us also. That is the exact reason why AWS is talking about Outpost, which is using the same technology which is deployed on their cloud nodes to be deployed on customers' own data center as well. If that data has to remain within the environment, it can be deployed in those kind of environments also. Very aptly stated, Sanjay, on that data classification, basically.
Thanks
Krishna,
for
back to
that.
you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I could see there is one more question around CI/CD. So Rajesh, you touched upon CI/CD. Respond to that. How CI/CD
Krishna, your voice is becoming blank in between. So I believe this is question which you're talking about how CI/CD is
exactly
provider driven and what's the role in it from a customer perspective.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that if that's the question, so see, CI/CD is about automating some of the processes that you may have between the development team. So normally what we've seen for any application workload which is deployed, which is critical, you would have a production environment, you will have a test and development environment, and you would have a QA environment. And normally the way things are taken up in the customer places that you do a development which is done by the development team. They say it is ready. Then you do a stress test or a UAT on that particular environment. So you put it on a different environment. And then you go to the production environment to make sure that same thing. Once you have done whatever testing that you want to do on that from an application perspective, as well as from a stress test perspective, then you put it on the production environment. And what happens is when you're doing this takes its own sweet time. What you need at that point in time is when you're moving from UAT to production, you want exactly similar environment as you had in your UAT or test and development environment. So that becomes a challenge. So how do you automate this process of entire testing and development and doing a stress test before putting it on production is one such area where CI/CD pipeline or release management comes into play. And that's something which is taken up because you need to do this automation as per your application requirement. It cannot be generic. And that's where a customer's perspective is very important, that what is that they are looking for. Like I gave you an example of this online retail company. They said that we roll out those offers, and at times they have to roll out those offers as of yesterday. Now, if they have to do that, their development teams will work. Then there will be a UAT or a test and development environment on which it will be run for some period of time, and after that it will be put on a production environment. That used to take a month or a couple of weeks to them. They wanted to cut down this particular cycle. By doing this CI/CD release automation, what we made sure was that as soon as it has been tested on a UAT environment, you immediately release it on the production environment also. That thus they could reduce their cycle time from weeks to days basically. So if they had to roll out an offer, they don't have to wait for weeks to roll out that option. And that's the role that we did as a provider. But what customer explained was how they want that application to behave in certain environment. The development team, when I'm saying a customer, basically the development team which is there. Now I agree that in most of the organizations, they use standard commercial off-the-shelf softwares. So where does this DevOps come into play in that particular environment? But even in those environments, you take even SAP. SAP also, you would have a test and development environment, you will have a UAT environment, and you will have environment which is your production environment. So how do you cut down that cycle time between the people who are developing it for you and your production environment? That is something which can be automated using some of these automation capabilities which are there. I hope that answers to some extent.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I could see one question for Ganesh. Can you give some more case studies on FaaS or PaaS, that is function as a service and containerization as a service? Ganesh, are you there? Am I audible?
Yeah, Krishna. So I did hear your question. I'll have to search on the case studies. The case studies are publicly available on our website. If you want, you can also search on that, but we can take that offline as well.
Yeah, surely will.
Example is what we showcased in our case studies. Anand Bazar Patrika. They use function as a service because they use AWS Lambda as a service basically for an event basically. If they want to trigger something, so they are using function as a service by using AWS Lambda as a service from the platform for that application which they were developing for the news channel. So that's one example which I can talk about. But yes, we'll be able to share more as Ganesh stated.
Yeah, Krishna. Just one more thing. So on top of that, there are other customers also who are using Lambda basically to host their Lambda functions like FINRA that I talked about, Autodesk, Thomas Reuters, Square Engineers, and the Guardian, and there are multiple customers out there which I can actually name. But yeah, we can look at more details offline.
Okay, great. So we will be connecting with you with a concerned delegate for this query offline. Moving on, what about the security concerns in cloud? Though we have covered this point, but we would request Amandeep or maybe Jagdish or Sanjay to cover this point again. Security concerns in cloud. I hope you can hear me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as I have already shared, security is very, very specific to each industry. If I talk about the banking sector, they have a different set of securities and the norms which they have to follow. If I talk to about the R&D and manufacturing areas, where there are certain other level of, sensitivity of the data while they perform the certain tests and verify those things. So it's very, like it's maybe, for the every organization, it's very, very specific and very personal. And I said there are different flavors which are available with these cloud service providers. And as in the IT members or IT team who is evaluating the cloud, I believe you have to first identify the nature of business and how much critical your data is. Basis on that, you can really identify the flavor of services which the partner is providing, and then all the partners do not provide 100% level of security. You have to connect with other OEMs or other service providers who add on to the cloud services or who add on to the level of security what you want to deploy onto your environment, whether it's on the database level, whether it's at the network level, or whether it's at the application level. So you really need to evaluate the what is my requirement, and then basis on that you have to really work with the cloud service providers who are very well aware of the level of security which you have to put in place. Just for example, in Panasonic, when we have started working on the hybrid cloud model about few years back, we had a very detailed discussion with our service provider with regard to security. And then before we went to identify the different level of securities, whether it's from the access management point of view or whether it's from the security point of view. So first we identified what really is highly critical information and how to secure that high critical information. Then we came to that level. So I think you first need to understand what is your requirement, and then basis on that, all the solutions are available. As I said, private data center, cloud, there's no difference. So it's only a difference of what implementation you do, and as rightly highlighted by a few other panelists also, that as in the stakeholders, right stakeholders, you really need to identify very well that what really we want to implement onto our environment.
Yeah, thank you, Amandeep. Thank you all the panelists.
Krishna, just to add one pointer here, Amandeep stated it very well. That yes, there are security controls which are available natively on the cloud platform. There are certain technologies which are available in the market space. But what you also need is as a partner who would work with you to understand your security requirement and then implement it either on that platform or outside of that platform. And that's where, if you remember in my slide, I was talking about that as a service provider, we also are a managed security services provider. So we are a full-fledged MSSP where we can deploy a solution either on cloud environment or outside of cloud environment, and thus give a customer an environment which could include all levels of security. Like we were talking of database level. So you could have database access management, DAM, as a solution which could be deployed, or you could have HMS as a solution. So it depends on what level of security that you're looking for, and what you need is a partner who will be able to fulfill that journey along with you. And that's something which we as Tata Communication do with our customers.
Yeah. Thank you, Rajesh, for making that note. Thank you, all the panelists. With that, we have to wrap the session here. But thank you, everybody, for your insights. And thank you to our wonderful audience out there. For any feedback or query, you can write to me at krishna.mukherjee@timesgroup.com. I will repeat, it's krishna.mukherjee@timesgroup.com. Also, once you log off from the platform, there will be a feedback form displayed on your screen. Please fill the same as detailed as possible. Thanks for joining this ET and Wire session powered by Tata Communications and Amazon Internet Services India Limited. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned to more such insightful discussions at ET Unwired. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.